We know in theory, on a fundamental level, that it's extremely wise to try to look after ourselves. It's a truth we hear repeated so often it has almost become background, noisy, gentle hum in a world that screams for our constant attention and performance. We understand, intellectually, that we should show ourselves the same compassion and patience we so readily and freely offer to our friends, our family, and even strangers. We're told to attempt, genuinely, to be kind to who we are with all our flaws, our history, and our quiet struggles. We nod in agreement when we hear these words, feeling a flicker of recognition, a momentary resolve to do better by ourselves. But the difficulty, the vast and often silent chasm, lies between knowing and doing. It lies in how to pull any of this off in the frantic, demanding reality of our daily lives. How, exactly, do you practice self-compassion when a critical deadline is looming and that relentless inner critic, that harsh, internal drill sergeant tease, screaming that you're not working fast enough, that you're lazy, that you're going to fail? How do you show yourself patience when you've made a mistake you feel you absolutely should have known better than to make? It tends to feel highly incongruous, almost laughably out of place, to try to interrupt the normal, panicked, stern, or critical way we speak to ourselves for the sake of a moment of stillness and nurture. Our internal monologue is a well-worn path, a deep, familiar groove carved by years of self-judgment, societal pressure, and perhaps the echoes of critical voices from our past. Trying to divert, it feels like trying to stop a runaway train with a handful of wildflowers. The truth is, for many of us, it can be infinitely easier to look after someone else. We'll drop everything to make soup for a sick friend. We'll stay up late to comfort a distressed partner. We'll spend hours soothing a frightened child. But directing that same profound generosity inwards often feels selfish, indulgent, or just plain impossible. That's why it may, in this context, help to try out a minor but powerfully transformative imaginative exercise. The goal is to reframe our entire experience, to shift our perspective from one of self-criticism to one of protective tenderness. The exercise is this. For one whole day, picture ourselves as being alongside our normal duties, always responsible for looking after a small child. Not just any child, but a distinctly sensitive 5-year-old who happens to be a version of our younger selves. Take a moment to truly visualize this child. See their wide, curious eyes, the way they hold their hands when they're nervous, perhaps a favorite worn-out t-shirt they're wearing. This isn't an abstract idea. This is your constant companion. Imagine that throughout an average day, we aren't going to be the only ones showing up and handling matters. From the moment our alarm clock shatters the morning quiet to the final, exhausted sigh before we fall asleep, we will be accompanied at all times by this far more intrepid, vulnerable, sleepy, delicate, sweet, and very shy 5-year-old. Think about what this truly means in practice. There will be a 5-year-old with wide, uncertain eyes coming with us to that high-stakes workplace presentation. As we stand before a room of executives, feeling our own heart pound and our palms grow slick, we must also be aware of the small, trembling hand clutching ours. We must feel the little person hiding behind our legs, terrified by the sea of strange, tall figures staring back, the bright glare of the projector, and the booming sound of our own voice through a microphone. There will be a 5-year-old in tow when we have to meet colleagues from the Korean branch people we've never met before and have to take them out for a formal lunch. While our adult mind is racing, trying to navigate cultural nuances, remember names, and appear confident and engaging, we must also consider the child beside us. A child who is utterly overwhelmed by the loud, clattering restaurant, the unfamiliar smells and tastes of the food, and the immense pressure to sit still, be polite, and remain quiet for what feels like an eternity. Later in the day, this small person, this piece of our own history, will then have to make that difficult phone call to a supplier who is known to be aggressive and condescending. Imagine the pre-call anxiety building in that little chest. Imagine them holding the phone, listening to the dial tone, their heart thumping with dread. Imagine their trembling voice as they try to sound professional, their deep fear of saying the wrong thing, of being scolded or dismissed by that angry, disembodied voice on the other end of the line. And the day isn't over. Later on, they will need to go to a party, a social gathering where they don't know very many people. For an adult, this is a social obligation. For a 5-year-old, it's a terrifying landscape. The room is filled with loud music that vibrates in their bones and waves of adult laughter that sound more intimidating than joyful. And here, they will be set the impossible task of trying to make some friends, of being told to walk up to a closed circle of strangers and find a way in. Then, when they're utterly drained, overstimulated, and just want the safety of home, they'll have to find a taxi on a dark, busy street or somehow navigate the complex and confusing public transit system, trying to make it back home on a very late train. Looked at through the eyes of an adult, our typical, capable pilot self, these prospects are unlikely to attract much attention or sympathy. This is just life. This is what we're used to. We tell ourselves to suck it up, to power through, to get on with it. We know what we have to do, and we'll do it competently enough, burying the stress, the fear, and the exhaustion under a thick blanket of professionalism. But considered through the eyes of a 5-year-old, we start to get a fairer, more honest picture of the threatening and draining dimensions of what we have to confront on a typical day. The demands don't shrink, but our perception of their impact is magnified to its true human scale. When we think of what it would take for a 5-year-old to have to deal with a room full of strangers, or to sit politely during a long, boring meeting, or to be tasked with plotting a safe route home in the dark, we begin to get a more vivid and more accurate sense of what we have grown dangerously used to making light of. We see the genuine difficulties to which we have grown numb, the profound bravery we exhibit just by showing up, and the heavy, invisible, brave mask we have forgotten we're even wearing. This matters immensely because pains that we don't acknowledge don't simply disappear. They have a habit of festering in the shadows, undermining us from within, growing in power until we finally pay them the attention they deserve. They will exact a toll, even if we consciously look away and put on a show of strength. This neglected pain manifests itself in subsidiary forms, in the tension that settles in our shoulders and becomes chronic migraines, in the heavy, gray fog of depression that descends without warning, in persistent backaches, in sudden waves of unexplained anxiety, or in outbursts of anger that feel disproportionate to the situation. We are, most of us, leading lives that are at points simply far too arduous for us to bear, but which we have forgotten to interpret, mourn, and most importantly, comfort ourselves for. We are asking a small child to run a marathon every single day and then scolding them for being tired. But here is the beautiful, hopeful truth. We are luckily and natively generally far better at looking after children than we are at looking after ourselves. Faced with an actual 5-year-old who is scared or tired, we mostly know what to do. Our instincts for care kick in automatically. We know to kneel down to their level, to speak in a softer voice. We understand where the threats and tensions might lie for a small person. We know to look out for the subtle signs, the rubbing of the eyes, the slight downturn of the lips that tells a child is sleepy or hungry or overwhelmed. We know how draining and frightening it is for a child to meet someone new or perform in public or get organized when there's little time. Our heart goes out to them. Poor puppet, we might mutter under our breath with genuine, profound affection. Poor little thing. We look at them and we don't see weakness. We see a tiny being trying their absolute best in a big, confusing world. We think of what they have to deal with, and we feel a surge of protectiveness. We want to shield them, to comfort them, to tell them everything will be okay. This is the very same tender, wise, protective concern we must learn to import into the treatment of ourselves. We too are in the end, in part, a 5-year-old. That child never left. They just became quiet, hidden beneath layers of adult responsibility and expectation. We, too, get sleepy and scared and confused and very, very apprehensive. And we suffer all the more for not allowing ourselves to know this clearly, for insisting on a fiction of invincibility, for assuming that we are older and tougher than we really are. So going forward, as we consider an average day, let's try to take a moment. Pause before the big meeting. Pause after the difficult phone call. In that pause, let's ask ourselves some deliberately naive-sounding and oddly sweet-natured questions. How would a 5-year-old cope with a morning we have planned? Would they need a snack? A moment of quiet? How would they deal with that stressful lunchtime? Would they need a hug afterwards? How might they feel about the mountain of tasks waiting in the afternoon? And as the sun sets, how might they be feeling towards evening? Are they lonely? Do they need to hear that they did a good job today? By doing this, we aren't patronizing ourselves or wallowing in helplessness. Quite the opposite. In the most adult of ways, we are finally acknowledging the debt we owe to the more fragile, historic parts of ourselves. We are becoming the wise and compassionate parent that our inner child has always needed. We are taking responsibility for our own complete well-being. True strength is not the denial of vulnerability. It is the compassionate integration of it. We will finally accede to a fairer, calmer, and kinder adulthood once we accept, with grace and without judgment, how close we remain away to the delicate, sensitive, tear-prone little person we once were. By holding their hand, by listening to their fears, and by tending to their needs, we're not becoming weaker. We are becoming whole. And in that wholeness, we discover a resilience that is deeper, more flexible, and more authentic than any brittle mask of strength could ever provide. We learn to navigate the world not as a hardened soldier, but as a wise and gentle guardian, strong enough to protect the most precious and vulnerable part of our own heart. We walk forward together hand in hand. If this message of self-compassion and imaginative kindness resonates with you, and you would like to explore more ideas for living a more considered, gentle, and meaningful life, please consider subscribing to our channel. We are building a community dedicated to reflection and growth, a quiet space in a loud world, and we would be honored to have you join us on this journey. Thank you for watching.